poor teacher helped a crying girl after school. Unaware his father was a CEO who'd lost his wife. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain has slowed to a gentle drizzle over the quiet courtyard of St. Mary's Elementary School. The late afternoon light flickers weakly through gray clouds, and the hallways echo with the sound of dripping water and the distant hum of janitors cleaning up for the night. Everyone has already gone home. Everyone except for Grace Miller. Grace is 29 years old, a young art teacher working on a temporary contract. Her classroom smells faintly of paint and chalk. She moves carefully, collecting brushes and sketchbooks into a worn canvas bag that once belonged to her mother. The paycheck barely covers her rent, but she always stays late to clean up, because this small classroom feels like her only safe place in the world. Just as she switches off the light, a faint sound stops her. Someone is crying. Grace turns her head toward the doorway, unsure if she imagined it. The sound comes again, soft, trembling, and heartbreaking. She follows it down the corridor until she finds a little girl sitting alone on the steps outside the art room, her pink backpack soaked, her hands clutching a broken pencil box. Grace kneels beside her. "Hey, sweetheart, what happened?" The child tries to wipe her tears, but only smudges more rainwater across her cheeks. "My pencil box broke. It was my mom's. Now it is gone forever." "Well." Grace opens her umbrella, shielding the girl from the rain. "Nothing is ever gone forever," she says gently. "Sometimes it just needs a little fixing." She takes out a strip of tape from her bag and carefully patches the crack on the box. Then she pulls out a sheet of paper and begins to draw a simple sun with smiling eyes. "See this?" she says, handing it to the girl. When the sun comes out, everything looks new again. The girl blinks, her sobs slowing. "You draw like my mom used to." "Oh." Grace's heart tightens. "Where is your mom now, honey?" The little girl's voice drops to a whisper. "Dad says she went to sleep in the sky and will not wake up." Grace swallows hard. The rain taps softly against the umbrella. She does not know what to say, so she simply stays beside the child until the tears fade into small hiccups. "What is your name?" Grace asks. "Leah," the girl says. "Leah Reed." Grace smiles. "I am Miss Miller. I teach art here. How about we draw together next week?" Leah nods shyly. "Okay." She folds the drawing of the smiling sun and tucks it carefully into her backpack. When the headlights of a black sedan appear at the gate, Leah stands up quickly. A driver steps out, calling her name. Leah turns back to Grace and waves before running off, her small figure disappearing into the misty evening. Grace watches her leave, a strange ache in her chest. She does not know who Leah's father is, or why a man would let his little girl wait alone after school on a rainy night. But as the gate closes, she whispers softly to herself, "Whoever he is, he should know how brave she is." The wind shifts, carrying the scent of wet asphalt and rain-soaked leaves. Grace folds the spare drawing that she made for Leah, the one with the same smiling sun, and slips it into her sketchbook. She has no idea that this small act of kindness will soon pull her into the life of a man who has lost everything, and that the drawing she just made will one day return to her in a way she could never imagine. The next morning, sunlight filters weakly through the dusty blinds of Grace Miller's small apartment. Her alarm clock rings at 6:30, echoing off the thin walls. Grace opens her eyes, blinking against the pale light. She sits up slowly, wrapping her blanket around her shoulders, the same old floral blanket she has had since college. The air is cold because the heater broke again last week. Her apartment is no bigger than a classroom supply closet, one narrow kitchen counter, a small wooden desk, and a mattress pressed against the wall. On the desk sits a chipped coffee mug that reads, "Paint your own sunshine." She keeps it even though the handle is cracked. Grace moves through her morning quietly, her bare feet brushing against the rough floor. She pours instant coffee into the mug, watches the steam rise, and glances at her sketchbook resting near the window. The drawing she made for Leah the smiling sun is tucked between its pages. For a moment, Grace smiles. She wonders if the little girl kept her copy, or if it was lost among all those expensive toys she probably has at home. At 7:30, Grace grabs her worn canvas bag and heads out the door. The streets are still damp from last night's rain. Cars rush past, splashing water onto the sidewalks. She pulls her coat tighter and walks the 2 blocks to St. Mary's Elementary School. The building looks calm under the morning light, red bricks glistening faintly. Inside the teacher's lounge, Grace greets a few coworkers who barely look up from their coffee. Most of them are older, permanent staff, who rarely speak to her except during meetings. She takes her seat quietly, flipping through a stack of lesson plans. A notice catches her eye. Budget cuts temporary art position under review. Her heart sinks. During her first class, Grace tries to push the worry aside. The students chatter about cartoons and recess, as she demonstrates how to mix watercolors to create shades of green. Her hands move steadily, but her mind drifts back to the little girl named Leah Reed. She keeps glancing at the door, half expecting the child to walk in again, clutching her backpack. By afternoon, the rain has returned soft at first, then heavier. The principal calls her to the office, handing her an envelope. "Miss Miller, your current contract ends next month," he says politely. "We will let you know if there is an extension, but there are no guarantees this time." Grace nods, her throat tight. She thanks him anyway and leaves, clutching the envelope to her chest. In the empty hallway, her reflection in the glass door looks smaller than she remembers. She whispers to herself, "It is fine. I will figure it out. I always do." That evening, she returns home with a headache and wet shoes. She changes into a sweatshirt, sits by the small desk, and flips open her sketchbook. Between the pages, the folded paper of Leah's sun drawing falls out. Grace smooths it gently. The yellow crayon marks faint but bright enough to lift her mood. She begins to draw again, this time, a new picture of a teacher and a child, standing beneath the same Sunday. Just as she finishes, her phone buzzes. It is a message from the school's front office. "Miss Miller, a man came by earlier asking for you. He did not leave his name, only said you would know when you saw this." Attached is a photo of a single object left at the gate, a tiny ribbon-tied pencil box with a patch of tape along its side, the same one Grace fixed last night. Grace stares at the photo, her heart beating faster. The man who brought it must be Leah's father. But why return it? She wonders if she did something wrong, or if the father was offended that she helped his child. The questions spin through her mind until the clock strikes 9. She places the drawing back into her sketchbook and whispers, "Maybe I crossed a line." Still, a small voice inside her says something different, that maybe, just maybe, the story with that little girl and her mysterious father is not over yet. Outside, the rain softens again, tapping against the window in slow rhythm, as if urging her to wait and see what tomorrow will bring. The next day arrives gray and quiet. The air smells of wet pavement, and clouds still hang low over the city. Grace Miller walks to St. Mary's Elementary School, with her scarf pulled tight around her neck. The streets shimmer from last night's rain. She cannot stop thinking about the message from the office, the pencil box, the man who came asking for her, and the strange feeling that something important is about to unfold. When she reaches her classroom, everything seems normal. The students are already lining up outside, their laughter echoing down the hallway. Grace unlocks the door, flips on the lights, and sets her bag on the desk. The familiar smell of paper and watercolor fills the room, a small comfort against the uncertainty pressing on her chest. As she arranges the paint trays, the principal appears at the door. "Miss Miller," he says, "someone dropped this off for you earlier this morning." He hands her a brown envelope, unmarked except for her name written in neat, formal handwriting. Grace opens it carefully. Inside is a folded note on heavy white stationery. The message is brief. "Thank you for your kindness toward my daughter. She spoke of you fondly. Please accept this small token of appreciation." There is no signature, only a business card clipped to the bottom. Alexander Reed, Chief Executive Officer, Phoenix Group Incorporated. Grace reads the name twice. Her breath catches. So this is Leah's father, the man behind the black sedan, the one who sent a driver instead of coming himself. She has seen his company's name on billboards and charity banners across the city, but she never imagined receiving a message from him. Inside the envelope, she finds a small donation slip for the school's art department, $500 to purchase supplies for her students. The gesture feels generous yet distant, like something done out of formality rather than warmth. During lunch, Grace sits alone at the teacher's table, staring at the card. The other teachers talk about grades and field trips, their voices fading into a blur. She traces her finger over the embossed letters of Alexander's name, wondering what kind of man he is. A grieving father? A corporate figure too busy to feel anything? Or someone who, beneath the layers of success, carries the same loneliness she often feels? After school ends, Grace decides to visit the art supply store to make use of the donation. She buys new brushes, watercolor sets, and sketch pads for her students. The clerk wraps everything neatly and smiles, but Grace still feels unsettled. On her way out, the evening light glows faintly gold, breaking through the clouds for the first time in days. At the bus stop, she waits, balancing the box of supplies in her arms. The wind lifts a strand of hair into her face. A black sedan pulls up to the curb. The driver steps out. It is the same man she saw at the school gate before. He walks toward her and speaks politely. "Miss Miller, Mr. Reed asked me to deliver this to you." He hands her a smaller envelope this time. Inside, Grace finds a child's drawing, a new one, drawn with bright crayon lines. It shows two figures under the same yellow sun, one tall, one smaller, holding hands. Beneath it, written in careful letters, are the words, "To Miss Miller, from Leah." Grace's eyes soften. The driver nods once and says, "Leah wanted you to have it." He returns to the car and drives away before she can ask any questions. She stands there for a long moment, the evening traffic moving around her. The city hums with distant horns and soft rain beginning again. She presses the drawing to her chest. That night, back in her apartment, Grace places the new picture beside the first one in her sketchbook, the two suns glowing side by side. She whispers into the quiet room, "So she remembered me." Oh, for the first time in many weeks, she feels a flicker of something she cannot name, maybe hope, maybe curiosity. She wonders what kind of life Leah returns to after school, and what sort of man Alexander Reed truly is behind his title and his wealth. As the rain taps softly against the window, Grace looks out at the city lights. She has no idea that this small connection, a child's drawing and a repaired pencil box, has already tied her fate to a man she has never met, a man whose grief still hides behind the glass walls of power and success. A few days later, the air grows colder, and the trees around St. Mary's Elementary School begin to shed their last leaves. Grace Miller walks through the courtyard after her final class, her arms filled with new art supplies bought with the donation. The children wave goodbye as they leave, and their laughter fades down the hall. As Grace locks the classroom door, she hears a familiar voice behind her. "Miss Miller." She turns. Standing at the end of the hallway is a tall man in a dark gray coat, holding an umbrella. His presence fills the quiet space with an uneasy stillness. His expression is calm, but his eyes seem older than his 30 years. "I am Alexander Reed," he says. "We met very briefly when my daughter was upset after school." Grace's heart stirs with surprise. She nods politely. "Mr. Reed, I received your letters. Thank you for helping our art program." He looks at her carefully. "It is the least I could do. Leah speaks about you often." They walk together toward the front gate. The rain starts again, soft but steady. Alexander opens his umbrella, holding it slightly over her side as well. Grace notices his hand tremble when a group of students runs past laughing. Something in his face shifts pain flickering behind restraint. When they reach the curb, a driver waits by the car. Before getting in, Alexander hesitates. "Miss Miller," he says quietly, "Leah has not been herself for a long time. She hardly talked to anyone since her mother's accident. You are the first person who made her laugh again." Grace softens. "She is a wonderful child, Mr. Reed. She just needs warmth and time." He nods, his jaw tightening. "Perhaps. I do not know how to give her that anymore." For a moment, the sound of rain fills the silence between them. Grace feels a strange mix of sympathy and curiosity. Beneath his composed exterior, there is something fragile, a loneliness she recognizes too well. "Would it be all right if Leah continued taking art lessons with you outside of school?" he asks suddenly. "Privately, at our home perhaps. She seems calmer when she draws with you." Grace hesitates. The idea feels unexpected, even risky, but his sincerity disarms her. "If the school allows it, I would be happy to help." Alexander gives a small nod, his voice quieter. "Thank you. I will arrange it properly." He steps into the car, then adds, "You have done more than you realize, Miss Miller." The car drives off, leaving Grace standing in the drizzle, her coat damp and her heart unsteady. That evening, she sits by her desk and writes in her notebook, "Today, I met Leah's father. He looks like a man who carries too many storms inside." Outside her window, the streetlights glow through the rain, and she cannot shake the image of his tired eyes. For the first time, his name feels less like a signature on fine paper and more like a person, a man who once loved deeply and now walks through life afraid to feel again. 1 week later, Grace Miller receives a formal letter from the Phoenix Group Foundation, inviting her to teach a small weekend art program for children who have lost a parent. The project is sponsored personally by Alexander Reed. Her hands tremble slightly as she reads it. Saturday morning arrives bright and cold. Grace travels by bus to the Phoenix Community Center, a wide glass building surrounded by trimmed hedges and quiet fountains. Inside, sunlight pours through the high windows, making the art studio glow. Rows of blank canvases wait on the tables. Leah runs to her the moment she enters. "Miss Miller, you came." The little girl's joy fills the room. Grace kneels to hug her. "Of course I came. I promised you, did I not?" When Grace looks up, Alexander is standing near the doorway. Today he wears no suit jacket, only a navy sweater that softens his usual formality. He nods in greeting. "Welcome, Miss Miller." "Thank you for accepting." Grace smiles politely. "Thank you for inviting me." Throughout the morning, Grace leads the children in painting scenes of light sunrises, lamps, candles. Alexander watches quietly from a distance, his expression unreadable but calmer than before. He listens as Grace explains. "When we paint light, we remind ourselves that darkness does not last forever." At one point, Leah tugs her father's hand. "Bah, come draw with us." He hesitates, but Grace encourages gently. "It does not have to be perfect, Mr. Reed. It just has to be honest." Slowly, Alexander sits beside Leah, picking up a brush. His first strokes are stiff, uncertain, but as Grace guides him, his movements loosen. Together they paint a single candle glowing in the dark. For a long while, no one speaks. The quiet becomes peaceful instead of heavy. When Alexander finally looks up, his eyes meet Grace's. Something wordless passes between them. Recognition, gratitude, and something warmer just beginning to awaken. By the end of class, Leah clutches the painting proudly. "Look, Miss Miller, we made light." Grace smiles, her heart unexpectedly full. She glances once more at Alexander, who stands beside his daughter, and wonders if this is how healing begins, not through grand gestures, but through small moments of shared color and light. Over the next several weeks, the weekend art sessions become the quiet rhythm of Grace Miller's life. Every Saturday, she takes the same early bus, carrying paints and sketchbooks, and every Saturday, Leah waits at the entrance of the Phoenix Community Center, waving the moment she sees her teacher. Grace teaches the children to mix color, to draw skies, to paint what they feel instead of what they see. Each lesson ends with soft laughter, small hands covered in paint, and Alexander standing nearby, always watching. He speaks little during those classes, but his presence grows less distant. One morning, as the children paint in silence, Grace notices Alexander sketching alone in the corner. She walks over quietly and sees the outlines of a woman's face, gentle and unfinished. "She looks kind," Grace says softly. Alexander closes his eyes for a moment. She was. "My wife loved color more than anything. Since the accident, I have not touched a brush until now." Grace hesitates, then says, "Maybe she would be happy that you are painting again." He glances at her, a faint smile breaking through his reserve. "Maybe she would." The sound of Leah's laughter fills the air, and for the first time, Grace hears Alexander laugh as well, low, quiet, but real. It surprises them both. Later that afternoon, as the children leave, a storm rolls in quickly. Thunder rumbles outside, and rain beats against the tall windows. Grace gathers the supplies while Alexander helps fold the easels. When a flash of lightning cuts across the sky, Leah jumps and grabs her father's hand. Grace reaches out instinctively to steady her, her hand brushing against his. The brief touch sends a spark neither expects. They both freeze, unsure what to say. "Thank you," Alexander murmurs, his voice rough. "You always know what to do." Grace forces a small smile. "That is what teachers do, Mr. Reed." He looks at her, his eyes steady. "No, it is more than that. You do not just teach, you listen." For a moment, the rain is the only sound. Grace feels her heart pound, and she turns away, pretending to rearrange brushes. "Listening helps children feel safe," she says softly. When the storm finally eases, Alexander offers her a ride home. In the car, Leah falls asleep in the back seat, clutching her new painting. Grace sits quietly beside Alexander, as the city lights reflect across the wet streets. "I used to think grief was something you survived by forgetting," he says, eyes on the road. "But maybe it is something you survive by remembering the right way." Grace looks at him, the words lingering in the warm silence. "Remembering keeps love alive," she answers. When they stop in front of her small apartment building, Alexander turns to her. "Miss Miller, thank you for helping us find a little light again." Grace smiles faintly. "You and Leah found it yourselves. I only showed where to look." He nods, but his gaze stays on her for a moment longer than necessary. Then he says quietly, "Good night, Grace." As the car pulls away, Grace stands under the glow of the street lamp, the rain glistening on her hair. She realizes that her heart no longer feels as heavy as before. Something has changed between them, something tender, fragile, and real. Like a flame that refuses to go out even after the storm has passed. The following week, everything that had felt peaceful begins to shift. Grace Miller notices it first when she walks into St. Mary's Elementary School on Monday morning. Conversations stop as she passes. A few teachers whisper, glancing in her direction. Someone has left a folded newspaper on her desk. Across the front page, a headline reads, "CEO, Alexander Reed's New Muse. Art teacher seen spending weekends with billionaire and daughter." Grace's breath catches. The photo beneath the headline shows her and Leah outside the Phoenix Community Center, with Alexander in the background. The image looks intimate, even though it was innocent. Her stomach turns cold. By noon, the principal calls her into the office. His tone is calm, but distant. "Miss Miller, the school has received several phone calls. Parents are concerned. We have to conduct an internal review before you continue teaching." Grace nods numbly. "I have done nothing wrong." "I understand," he says. But the board insists on a temporary suspension until things clear up. When she leaves the office, her legs feel heavy. She avoids the curious eyes of other teachers and steps outside into the biting wind. Rain threatens again, gray clouds pressing low over the schoolyard. That evening, she receives a call from an unknown number. It is Alexander. His voice is sharp, controlled, but underneath she hears regret. "Grace, I just found out about the article. Someone in my company leaked those photographs. I am so sorry. I will handle this." "It is already done," she says quietly. "The school suspended me. People think I used your daughter to get close to you." "That is not true," he insists. "I know," Grace whispers. "But truth is not what people like to believe." Silence stretches between them. Finally, Alexander says, "Please, do not lose faith in what we built with Leah. I promise I will fix this." 2 days pass. The story spreads online. Comment sections overflow with harsh words. Grace stays in her small apartment, curtains closed, afraid to open her phone. The sound of the rain outside is constant, like an echo of her thoughts. A soft knock breaks the silence. When she opens the door, Leah stands there, drenched, holding a small envelope. Behind her is the family driver, waiting at the curb. "Daddy did not want me to come," Leah says tearfully, "but I wanted to give you this." Inside the envelope is a drawing 3 figures under one bright yellow sun, the words written in careful crayon. "Family means people who make you smile again." Grace's eyes fill with tears. "Leah, you should not have come out in the rain." Leah shakes her head. "You always said kindness is never wrong." Before Grace can answer, The driver calls her back. The car drives away into the storm, leaving Grace standing by her door, the paper trembling in her hand. She sits on the floor, hugging the drawing to her chest. For the first time, she lets herself cry not from guilt, but from the pain of being misunderstood. Somewhere across the city, Alexander faces his own storm inside the glass walls of his company. He reads the headlines accusing him of scandal and favoritism, his fists tightening at his sides. In his heart, he knows what he must do next, even if it costs him everything. 3 days later, the city wakes to a quiet morning that feels like the calm before another storm. In the tall glass building of Phoenix Group, Alexander Reed walks through the corridor with a steady, determined pace. Employees step aside as he passes. His usual calm expression is gone. Today there is purpose in every movement. He enters the boardroom, where the directors sit waiting. Newspapers lie open on the table, headlines bold with accusation. One of the senior executives, a woman named Caroline Holt, looks up with false sympathy. "Alexander, the board is worried. This scandal with the teacher has damaged our reputation. The investors want you to distance yourself immediately." Alexander meets her eyes. "You are the one who leaked those photographs, Caroline." Her expression hardens. "You have no proof." "I do," he replies. He places a file on the table, copies of internal emails, phone records, and bank transfers. The room falls silent. "I gave you trust," Alexander continues, his voice low but firm. "And you used it to humiliate an innocent woman and my daughter." Caroline tries to speak, but he cuts her off. "You are terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out." "Oh." No one moves until she stands and storms from the room. When the door closes, Alexander exhales slowly, then looks at the remaining board members. "I will hold a public press conference this afternoon. The truth deserves light." That evening, cameras flash in the lobby of the Phoenix Group headquarters. Reporters crowd forward as Alexander takes the podium. His dark suit contrasts with the pale marble walls behind him. Leah stands quietly beside him, holding Grace's drawing, the one with the sun and the word, family. "My name is Alexander Reed," he begins. "I wish to address the rumors surrounding my friendship with Miss Grace Miller, an art teacher who has worked with our community foundation." He pauses, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Miss Miller's kindness helped my daughter smile again after years of silence. She did nothing wrong. The lies you have read were created by someone seeking power inside this company. That person has been removed." He looks down at Leah, then back at the cameras. "I owe both of them more than I can ever repay." When he finishes, the crowd murmurs. But the tone has changed, less judgment, more understanding. For the first time, the public sees not a powerful CEO defending his image, but a father protecting the people who gave him back his humanity. Later that night, Grace watches the broadcast on her small television. She listens as Alexander's voice fills the screen, clear and unwavering. When he says her name, her heart catches. By the time the press conference ends, tears are streaming down her face. A few minutes later, her phone buzzes. A message appears from an unknown number. "I told the truth. Now it is your turn to believe in it. Can we meet tomorrow at the community center?" Grace types slowly, her hands trembling slightly. "Yes." Outside, the rain has finally stopped. The city lights shimmer on the wet streets, and for the first time in weeks, Grace opens her window. The air smells fresh, clean, and full of quiet hope. The next morning, sunlight spills across the Phoenix Community Center, bright and golden after so many days of rain. Grace Miller arrives early, carrying her sketchbook and a small bag of art supplies. The familiar scent of paint and paper welcomes her. For the first time in weeks, her heart feels steady. She sets the materials on the table, arranging brushes and jars of color when the door opens quietly behind her. Alexander Reed steps inside, dressed simply in a white shirt and gray jacket. Leah runs ahead of him, her laughter echoing through the empty room. "Miss Miller!" Leah shouts, throwing her arms around her teacher. "Daddy told the truth. Everyone knows now that you are good." Grace bends down, hugging her tightly. "Thank you, Leah. I am so proud of you." Alexander watches them, his expression soft. When Grace looks up, their eyes meet, and for a long moment, neither speaks. Finally, he says quietly, "You did not have to come today. After everything that happened, I would have understood if you walked away." Grace shakes her head. I came because this place, these children matter, and because you told the truth when it was hardest to do so. He takes a slow breath, the tension leaving his shoulders. I was afraid that if I stayed silent, I would lose more than just my reputation. I would lose the chance to do what is right. Grace smiles faintly. Doing what is right is never the wrong choice. For the next hour, they work side by side with the children, painting a large mural on the wall. The picture shows a bright sun rising over a field of flowers. Leah paints the center, her laughter filling the air, while Grace and Alexander add colors to the horizon. Every brushstroke feels like a small piece of peace returning to their lives. When the mural is complete, Leah claps her hands. Look, we made light again. Alexander looks at Grace. Leah is right. You helped us find light, Grace. Grace wipes a streak of yellow paint from her wrist. You both helped me find it too. Later, as the children leave, the three of them remain in the quiet studio. The sunlight falls through the tall windows, turning the air golden. Alexander reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small silver pendant shaped like a sundae. This belonged to my wife, he says softly. Leah wanted you to have it. She said you brought back the same warmth her mother once gave us. Grace's eyes glisten. I cannot accept this. Alexander shakes his head. It is not a gift. It is a promise that we will keep building light together. He takes her hand, their fingers intertwining gently. Leah smiles, standing between them, holding both their hands. Outside, the city hums quietly, washed clean by the storm. The mural on the wall glows in the afternoon sun, the painted rays spreading across the room like real light. As the camera of memory pulls back, Grace, Alexander, and Leah stand together beneath the mural, three souls once broken, now whole again. The voiceover closes softly. Sometimes, love does not arrive with grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes, it begins with a single act of kindness on a rainy afternoon, and from that moment, everything changes forever.